Hey there, thank you so much for joining us for Obi-Wan Online. Man, as always, we're so glad that you're with us. How many of you remember the first day at a new school? Whether that was because you moved somewhere different, or maybe you were going from elementary to middle school, or middle school to high school, maybe even to college. Or how many of you remember your first day on a new job? And what were some of those feelings that you were thinking? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you thinking, man, who's going to talk to me? And will I really like this? And will they like me? Or maybe you were thinking, man, this is finally going to change. This is going to be for the better. You're like, you know what? Middle school sucked. High school is going to be amazing. Hopefully your high school was amazing. Or you're like, man, my old job, it was a struggle, but I'm just hoping for a new start. I'm sure in some ways we had a mix of emotions, but something that can be really common when we're in a new school or get a new job is that we'll have some sort of school orientation or even some type of job orientation. And one of the purposes of a school orientation is for us to maybe meet some of our teachers, to meet the principal, to meet some of our classmates. Maybe a job orientation, it's to find out the culture of the organization. We able to meet some of our coworkers, see what our boss is doing. You know, orientations can be very important. Why? Because they can help us adjust to our new surroundings. And life, as well as our human nature, tends to orient us as well. Before you know it, we're adjusted to a certain way of doing things or a certain way of thinking or a certain value system. And in many ways, that's great. There's lots of things we're used to doing or that we believe in that we need to keep up. That said, there are some things, I really want you to hear this, that we've been oriented to that aren't working, and Jesus wants to disorient us from certain patterns or ways of thinking. Here's the thing though, sometimes his ways and values can be so different. They can seem so counterintuitive to what we're used to that they seem weird. But here's the thing we need to think about. With some things, normal isn't working. It may not feel natural or it may seem counterintuitive, but as we learn and then try to live out Jesus' values by faith, we'll discover that his way is the best way to go. Something that often feels normal in our society, in our lives at times, is division and chaos. And that's what we're going to address today. And it's something that Jesus has a great solution for. Let me give some examples. You see another fight on social media because someone has different opinions about 18,000 different things, right? Gossip and backbiting at work, one jealous of the other annoyed at the person's immaturity, a friendship that's destroyed by hurt and bitterness, another relationship destroyed by betrayal, another family at odds on the brink of falling apart, one family member fighting because they're only thinking of themselves, and then the other family member just so tired of the situation that they're doing nothing at all. Even some families being in so much strife that holidays become restless instead of restful. You know, whatever the case may be, chaos, whether it's at work, whether it's things we see over social media or the news or within our own family, within our own friendships, relationships, chaos can sometimes abound. And it's, in one way, it's not surprising. We live in a broken world and no one really is perfect. But if this is what we primarily see or experience, it can have an effect. For example, when someone comes from a broken background, even when their relationships are fine, they can still have this gnawing feeling in the back of their mind, like, you know what, when's this relationship gonna go south? And when there is some tension, the doubts definitely can swirl around a lot more, even though chaos and brokenness are very, very real. Thankfully, it doesn't have to stay that way. There's something that Jesus values that can help us as we go about life and interact in our everyday relationships, especially when chaos hits. I'm here to tell you, I'm not pretending it's easy. It's not easy. It can feel very counterintuitive, especially when you're at odds with someone. But it is the better way, and it can be more rewarding than just accepting the chaos as is. So let's go to the Bible to discover what it is. Jesus was talking with a crowd of people, and he starts out talking about being blessed. And he lists off several, and then he shares this one. Listen into Matthew 5. It says this: God blesses those, this is very important, who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. You know, when you think of the word blessed, think of the word happy, meaning happy are those who work for peace. Peace is God's solution to the chaos our world often finds themselves in. And guess what? Peace is God's solution for the chaos you often find yourself in. You know, we all want peace. That said, when you're feeling chaos in your life or in your relationships, it just doesn't seem attainable. It seems very elusive. It's like, thank you, Jesus, for the ideal of peace, but it's just not going to happen in my life, in this relationship. This relationship has been way too off for too long. Can I encourage you as we start this message, peace is obtainable. It is. But because it doesn't come naturally, it usually takes work. And that's why it's not easy. And that's why the verse says that we have to work for it. God knew the world would be in chaos. He knew we'd be surrounded by turmoil at times. He knew friendships would be destroyed. He knew families would be at odds. He knew that there'd be times where we'd wonder if anything else besides chaos is possible. That's why he offers peace. That's why he offers peace to you. In fact, he knew all humans would be separated from him. That there would be this divide between him and the human race. So to show something different than what the world was used to, he brought a peace offering. And the book of Isaiah gives us a hint. In Isaiah 9, it says, "A child will be born to us. A son will be given to us. He will rule over us and will be called Wonderful Advisor and Mighty God." But that's not all. He's called even more, and listen into what he's called. He will be called Father who lives forever, and guess what? A Prince who brings peace. Now, when Isaiah was written, Jesus wasn't born yet, but obviously we have the hindsight to know that Isaiah was talking about Jesus here. God is a peacemaker, and his peace offering to each of us was his son, Jesus. Jesus is a peacemaker. He values peace. His way is peace. He offers peace. And if you're a Christ follower, he desires for you to be a peacemaker as well. Someone who brings and offers peace where they go. Someone who brings peace and offers peace amidst the division. Do you see one of the reasons he asks us to be people of peace? It's his identity. And it can become our identity as well. And how cool is that? Again, We all want peace. It's just so hard sometimes to think that it could really, truly be obtainable. But listen into what God encourages us to do in Romans 12. In Romans 12, it says this: if it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. See, God encourages us to live at peace with others. Notice he doesn't put an impossibility on you. He doesn't put an impossibility on us. That's why he starts out by saying, if it's possible. Can I tell you, just so that there's no misunderstanding, it's not always possible. Someone else, for example, someone else may not be receptive. Maybe you've tried bringing peace several times. You've done your part. Listen, it's not your fault if they're not receptive. So you don't have to take fault there. You already did your part. Maybe you lost touch with someone and don't know how to get a hold of them anymore. In some cases, for your safety, you may need to stay away from someone if they want to choose harm. So this is what I want you to hear. While God does place responsibility on us to do our part, hear this is so important. It's so important. Not everything is our fault either. That's so important to hear. Just because you're not at peace with someone does not mean it's your fault, especially if you've tried and they're not receptive to it. But if it's possible, he does ask us to take responsibility and live at peace with others. So you know, peacemaking isn't sweeping things under the rug. Everything's great. Everything's fine. It's addressing it. It's addressing the problem or the division or the strife, but still offering peace. Also, depending on what happened, the relationship doesn't have to be the same either. In some cases, you may even need to end the relationship, but you can still do it in a peaceful way. And while I'm not pretending perfection in the process, please know that I'm not pretending perfection in the process. Robin and I have had to end a relationship at times, but we tried to do it in the most peaceful way that we could. See, peacemaking means to keep the peace, but it also means to do the work of recovering peace when it's not there. Oftentimes, when there's no peace there's division, there's strife. Oftentimes, the natural thing to do is to get back at someone or to do nothing at all. But can I tell you, it's not about getting back. It's about keeping peace. It's not about doing nothing at all. It's about doing the work so that peace can be recovered. Now, I won't pretend I can address everything within a message, but with our remaining time, I'd like to talk about a few things you can do to offer peace when you're at odds with others. Also, you can do these things when you're asked to help others come to peace. Maybe you'll have a situation in the future where it doesn't directly involve you, but maybe both parties call you into a situation. You can do these same things to try to offer peace to a situation. So let's go to the Bible to find out some of these things. Proverbs 18 says this. It says, in court, the first one to speak seems right. I mean, how truthful is the Bible? That does seem right? It's like, okay, man, I've heard your side. You must be telling the truth. I've heard your side. Yeah, your way is right. But then look at what the Bible says next. Then someone else comes forward and questions him. So if you're going to be someone that offers peace to others that you're at odds with, or to help others that are at odds, number one, go to the middle. You know, one of the thoughts behind this proverb is that there are two sides to the story. There's two sides to the story. While there are extreme cases from time to time where the other side really doesn't matter, in normal circumstances, there are two sides to every story. I know you may feel strongly about your side and your story, but there's someone else that feels the exact same way as you. And when you're at odds, it's so important to listen and consider the other person's story and feelings. Listen to your friend, your spouse, your kid, or another relative, or whoever you're at odds with. Your story and feelings are important. I want you to hear that. But don't hold on to them so tight that you end up discounting theirs. Usually there's truth and misunderstanding in the way both parties feel. There's assumptions on both sides that are wrong, and we all know what assuming does. Don't make me say it in church, okay, people? No, I'm just teasing with you. But let me try to illustrate this a little bit better here through the whiteboard here. You have, I'm going to draw a line in the middle here, and you have one side here, someone's side, okay, and oftentimes, and then you have someone else. You know, the point more is unity. We want a full circle, but we have someone's side and someone's side. And often what happens when someone's at odds, when something's disconnected, when something has been divided, is this person stays over here and this person stays over here. My feelings, my story, they hurt me. And often, even when someone's trying to work it out, they're like, no, I want you to see it from my point of view. Come to my side. No, I want you to consider my feelings. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but a lot of times it just keeps going back and forth, no one moving. What needs to happen is realizing that there's two sides to the story, that in normal circumstances, both parties' feelings matter, both points of view matter, that there's truth and misunderstanding on both sides. And so often what's needed is for each party, instead of expecting the other to go to the other side, it's each party going to the middle. Going to the middle, seeing the other person's point of view, seeing the other person's perspective, considering the other person's feelings, bringing compromise instead of, and I'm not talking about negative compromise, of course, but positive compromise, which places the relationship higher. It's just so important, because while you're at odds, I know that going to the middle can seem impossible. That said, there is wisdom out there that can help us come to peace, that can help us come to wholeness. I hope that really helped you see that it's very important to be able to go to the middle. But let's read about this wisdom in James 3 that can help us go to the middle, that can help us come to some healthy compromise. In James 3, it says this, but the wisdom from above, here we go, disorientation, God's wisdom. The wisdom from above is, first of all, pure. It's also peace-loving, gentle at times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant the seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. James is encouraging us that there's a certain type of wisdom that loves peace. It's like the second thing he says about this kind of wisdom. It's a wisdom that keeps peace in mind. Peace is one of the focuses. It's wisdom from above. Like I said, it's God's wisdom. Now, do you notice that one of the things describing this kind of wisdom is that it's willing to yield to others? Yield means to give way. Oftentimes, going to the middle is about each person yielding, both parties compromising, both parties considering the other person's story and feelings. Yielding isn't necessarily, I want you to hear this, it's not about who's right. I know it's hard, and this might even be harder. It's not about winning. I know it's just getting harder. It can seem so counterintuitive. But when we really think about it, it's the best way to go. It's about going to the middle so the relationship can move forward in peace. God could have played the I'm right, you're wrong, so you're screwed card. But he didn't do that. He instead offered peace through Jesus. If you've ever asked to help others, if you're ever asked to help others in their conflict, remember, we're often oriented to take sides, especially when it's our side, of course. But God reminds us that there's two sides to a story. Instead of joining in the gossip, help others by listening to both sides and encouraging both sides to listen to each other. Sometimes a peacemaker is the most unpopular person because they're not taking sides. It's like, why aren't you taking my side? Well, why aren't you taking my side? We have to remember as peacemakers that it's not about popularity. The point is to bring peace for others. You know, just being transparent, and you've heard things like this before. If you've heard me speak before, Robin and I get off. And what I'm about to talk about can apply to any relationship, a friend, a coworker, another relative. But just, for my example, talking about Robin, we get off, and there's seasons where it can even be often. Do you know what usually keeps us divided? It's when, kind of like the what we just talked about. It's like, no, see my side, see my feeling, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And again, at some point we have to express that. I'm not saying that we don't share that, but when we're starting to get back together, oftentimes, sometimes, whatever, it's when both of us are yielding. It's when both of us are thinking of the other as well. It's when both of us are listening. It's when both of us aren't focused on winning or who's right, but when we're focused on, this is about our marriage. This is about our relationship. We have to remember, Jesus doesn't say, happy is the person that's right. He doesn't say, happy is the person that wins. Nothing wrong with winning or being right, but I think you're getting my point. He says, happy is the person who works for peace. You see, you want to have peace with others. Go to the middle. Now let's go back to the Bible to find another step that can help us, another thing we can do to have peace with others. In 1 Corinthians 9, the writer says this, yes, I try to find common ground with everyone. That part's very important. Doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessings. So number 2, if you're going to be someone that offers peace when you're in chaos with someone, or again, if you're going to help two parties get to peace, number 2, look for the common. Look for the common. In context, the writer of Corinthians, who was Paul, was trying to find common ground with others so he could reach them with the hope of Jesus. And now, why did Paul look for the common? Because he knew it's important in connecting with others. See, when you're at odds with sometimes it's doing the work of looking for the common so you can make a connection and build from there. See, we're used to, the way we're oriented, we're used to looking for the differences. man, their personality's just way too different than mine. Man, the way they dress, or the things that they do are just so different. The lives that they lead are just so different. Man, their opinions, the way they vote, the way they believe, it's just so different than mine. You see, it's not always natural for us to look for the things we have in common, especially when we're at odds. So we need Jesus to disorient that so that and to help us start looking for common ground. In fact, oftentimes, the reason that we're at odds is because of our differences. And when this happens, it can be valuable to look for things you have in common and build from there. Let's say you're off with your coworker. Even though you're taking different approaches, maybe it's starting with realizing that both of you care about the company you work for, and both of you care about doing a quality job, and you build from there. Maybe in a marriage, the common is realizing, here's the common part, you realize that both of you have done some wrong, so both of you need to say sorry, and then you build from there. Maybe it's listening more than talking, which will help you realize that you're actually saying the same thing. Man, this happens to Robin and I at times. We fight, and then somehow come to the realization that I think we're kind of saying the same thing. It's like that whole fight was pointless, right? It happens to me and my daughter at times. And at times it takes my wife to show us that we're actually saying common things. So if you're at odds with someone, maybe it would be helpful to bring someone else into the situation to see if they can help you find the common. Even if the divide seems massive, you may find out that you're pretty close to saying the same thing. You're just saying it differently. You're just looking at it differently. Even if there's been a lot of damage, you may find that both of you still care. You are just approaching it from different angles. And if you're the one that's asked to help, to come into a situation to help a couple parties out, remember, people often focus on the differences. So it's important for you to look for the common, help them to see the common, and then help them build from there. I really want you to think about this. Think about it, whatever the relationship, a friend, a marriage, a coworker you liked, a job that you were passionate about. Why did you start to like your friend in the first place? Maybe you found some type of common ground with them. And it just kind of, maybe it was the same hobby. It was the same sports team. Maybe you were at similar walks of faith. Maybe you lived in the same neighborhood. Maybe you had the same job or the same passions. But there was something, before you knew this person, there was something that brought you to common ground. And then you built a relationship from there. And it could be, if you're at odds with that person now, again, whether that's a spouse, a friend, a relative, whoever, it may be needing to go back to that common place again. Say, you know what, we still have this in common. We still care. We still have this piece in common. And you just start building from there instead of pointing out. It's not that you're ignoring the differences, but you're not pointing them out everywhere. You're focusing on the common again, and you're going to start building from there. Because you want to be at peace with others, look for the common. There's one more thing I want to talk about that can help you have peace with others. Number 3, if you want to be someone that brings peace when you're at odds with someone, or helps a couple different parties or a couple different people when they're at odds, bringing peace to them. Number 3, find higher ground. Find higher ground. Guys, if I can be just so transparent, there's some things that are just higher that should unite us no matter our differences, our personalities, our opinions, our backgrounds, our beliefs. But while there are exceptions, even when we've been hurt or betrayed, there are higher things that can still bring us peace. Again, the relationship may even need to change, but it doesn't mean that it can change, that it can't change peaceably. That the parties can't walk away in peace, even if the relationship does change. Not in all relationships per se, but sometimes the relationship or friendship itself should be the thing that calls you higher than your differences or hurts. It's like, you know what? You did hurt me, but I'm still going to try and find the higher ground because of our friendship. Hey, I know we have our differences, but we're a family. So we're not going to give up and let division win. Speaking of family, it's the same in the church. It's like, hey, we're brothers and sisters in Jesus. And if you've heard that said before and you really don't know what that's mean, it's just a simple way to say, hey, we're a family. We're family. We're brothers and sisters in Jesus. And because we have a relationship with Jesus, Jesus being the highest, that's higher than and that can be what's higher than our personal belief or opinions, so we can still be united. Speaking of Jesus, you're already going to know this, but just to say it, he's the highest ground. He's the reason we can stay united to others, whether family, friends, or others, whether it's a marriage, a friendship, or another relationship. When you have two people in Jesus, I want you, let's go back to the drawing board here. When you have two people in Jesus, I want you to think of that relationship as a triangle. And again, we're saying that Jesus is the higher ground. And so you say you have a person here and you have a person here. You know, they start to be like, you know what, maybe peace is the answer. Maybe yielding is the answer. Maybe Jesus really does know what he's talking about. Man, it is really neat to get closer to Jesus. He really can give us peace. What has happened as both parties have tried to find higher ground in Jesus, as both parties have tried to get closer to Jesus, what has naturally happened to these people? They themselves have naturally gotten closer. They themselves have actually gotten closer, working at peace, working by faith on Jesus' principles and what he says. You know, maybe not always getting it. Maybe, you know, it's like, man, this is really weird, but normal's not working. So maybe I am going to trust what Jesus has to say about these things and about these relations. Automatically, they are closer because they're trying to get closer to Jesus. And that's really, really cool, and it's just so vital to remember that. And if there's anyone watching right now that's single, can I just encourage you? This is why it's so important when you're looking for a spouse to really ask yourselves, where are they at in the faith? Because it's so important to be able to find the same higher ground, to find the same value systems. It's hard enough even when two people are in Jesus to find the higher ground. But if one person has the higher ground of Jesus and then someone else doesn't, you're never going to be able to look there. So it's often very important in a significant relationship like a marriage, where when you're trying to figure this thing out, if this person's right for you, to be able to see where their faith is at. It doesn't mean your faith has to be at the same level, the same maturity level, but both of you looking to Jesus. I know what some of you are thinking though. Well, PK, what about when the person isn't a Christ follower? Good question. And this is going back to all relationships now. Good question. Even then, Jesus asked the person who does follow him to do the work of peace. to find the higher principle or the higher ground that will help bring peace to the situation. Remember, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with others. Now, if you've tried and they're not receptive, again, it doesn't mean that it's your fault, but you've at least done your part to live at peace. And here's what's cool. Jesus not only shows us the best way, he helps us along the way. He can help us offer peace when it's hard, when they're not receptive, when we're in chaos, even when it doesn't seem natural, even when we want to bite back, even when it seems counterintuitive to do so. You know, if you're being asked to help bring peace to others, remember, people often get stuck in things that do matter. They really do matter, but there are higher things that you can try and point them to. Yeah, I really want you to think about this, because oftentimes we just kind of go about life and we oftentimes just don't think about how we're responding to others or how others are responding to us. So can you give yourself a gift in this moment and think with me for a minute? Again, let's go back to the example of a coworker. And again, these can apply to any relationships, but is it really worth your job performance or your company struggling just because you're off with another coworker and you can't do the work together? No, it's just like, hey, we both work for the same company. We've got to find a way. So you're going to the higher ground. We've got to find a way to do this together. Let's go to the church. Is it really worth it to see a church divided just because people vote differently or believe differently about certain subjects within the family or certain subjects within this world? Should a church really be divided just because we have different opinions about things? Or should a church's mission be the mission to know Jesus and to make him known? Should that be sacrificed just because we have different opinions? No, it's about going to the higher relationship to say, you know what? We are brothers and sisters in Jesus. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything. Yes, it's important that we see eye to eye on Jesus and some essentials, of course. But you know what? We're not going to see eye to eye on everything. But because we are in Jesus and because Jesus has given us a mission, we can unite behind that. Or how about this last example? Is it really worth a family dividing just because there's different personalities, differences of opinions, different beliefs, different lifestyles, different? Is it really worth seeing a family fall apart? Or is there something higher? The family unit being the higher. No, you know what? Yes, I know we're different. I know we see things from different angles, but we're not going to give up. We're a family, and we're committed to one another. Which, in closing, I have a question. Is there someone you need to offer peace to? If so, is there a step that you can even take this week? Don't let it go, because a week can turn into a month, and a month can turn into a year, and a year can turn into a decade. It's not fun. Is there something you can do this week? Yeah, I know you're hurt, and your story really is important. But maybe it's time to listen to their story so that and both of you yield, because you're gonna go to the middle. I know you're different, but maybe it's time to find to look for the common and to stop being at odds because of the differences and start uniting behind the common and build from there. I know it's not easy, but maybe doing the work of finding higher ground will pay off. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you Every once in a while, we're so oriented to certain things. And in some ways, that's good. In some ways, that's so good. But there's some things that we're oriented to that just doesn't help, and it makes it worse. And you come along and want to disorient that and say, hey, I have a better way of thinking. I have a better way to go. And instead of wanting us to just accept and be in division and strife and chaos, you come along and say, I have something better to offer. It's peace. So I give it to you, so not only that you can accept it, but so that you can pass it on to others as well. Lord, I don't know where each person is at that's watching today, but I pray for the relationships. And if anyone watching today is at odds in any of their relationships that are important to them or important to you, would you help them to take the step of peace? Would you help them to have the courage to offer peace, even when it may seem, kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't fully make sense. They want peace, they believe in it, but it's just like, whoa, how? And there may even be someone watching that just in general, you don't have peace in your life. And today you're realizing for the first time that Jesus is the ultimate peace giver. And you can have that peace. And it's just so you might want to say something like this: God, please forgive me for what I've done. I accept your peace today, your peace offering through Jesus. Jesus, thank you for dying for me. Thank you for forgiving me. And Jesus, would you now help lead me in peace? And would you help me to be a peacemaker just like you are? I pray that my identity will start to form into a peacemaker just like you are, Jesus. And God, for all of my friends, show them if there's a step that they need to take with someone that they're at odds with. Or God, maybe there's someone that's about to come to them and say, hey, can you help me out in this relationship? Show them, God, how they can bring peace to a couple different people or a couple different parties if they're asked to do that. Thank you, God, for this idea called peace. Without it, we would just meander around in chaos and strife and division, but we don't have to. There's something you want us to disorient from that, and there's something you want us to orient to, and it's called your peace. Thank you for that idea. Thank you, that's who you are. Would you help us to also be peacemakers, those who bring and offer peace to others. We love you, God. Thank you so much, and we pray these things in your name. Amen.